In the heart of a busy city, surrounded by luxury cars and men in suits, a humble young mechanic stepped forward. His clothes were worn, his hands covered with grease, but his eyes carried the fire of confidence. He looked at the gleaming Ferrari, a machine that had left everyone puzzled, and spoke with courage. "I can fix this car for $50,000. The crowd went silent for a second, then erupted in laughter. How could someone so simple, with no prestige or wealth, dare to make such an offer? Yet the boy stood tall, unshaken, with a heart full of determination. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this deserve to be heard. The moment the mechanic finished his bold proposal, the air filled with scoffs and mocking whispers. The wealthy owner of the Ferrari smirked, shaking his head in disbelief. "Fix my Ferrari? For $50,000? Boy, you don't even look like you can afford a single part of this car." The men in suits laughed louder, treating his confidence as nothing more than foolish arrogance. Some pointed at his oil-stained shirt, others questioned his knowledge. To them, he was just another poor dreamer trying to step into a world where he didn't belong. But behind the laughter, the young man's heart didn't tremble. Instead, their mockery only fueled the fire inside him. He knew what he was capable of, and deep within he was ready to prove them all wrong. Far from the shining lights of luxury showrooms, the young mechanic's world was simple. His garage was nothing more than a small shed on the edge of town. The walls were cracked, the tools old and rusty, but each corner carried the mark of his dedication. It was here, in this modest place, that he spent countless nights learning the language of engines. While others slept, he worked, dismantling, rebuilding, failing, and trying again. The sound of turning wrenches was his music, the smell of oil his perfume, and the spark of every ignition his victory. Though poor in material wealth, his garage was rich in something far greater: knowledge, experience, and passion. It was this hidden world that shaped the boy who now stood before the Ferrari, underestimated by men, blinded by pride. Long before that day, his gift had already begun to shine. As a child, while others played with toys, he was drawn to broken bicycles and discarded engines. He would sit for hours, fascinated by the mystery of how things worked. Neighbors soon noticed something unusual. The boy, who could barely afford school supplies, was fixing lawnmowers, motorbikes, and even old trucks. With no formal training, only curiosity and persistence, he uncovered secrets of machines that even experienced mechanics overlooked. What people dismissed as luck was, in truth, a natural talent sharpened by sleepless nights and a relentless spirit. By the time he was a teenager, his hands carried wisdom far beyond his years. And now, standing before the Ferrari, he wasn't just a boy making a bold promise. He was a prodigy, ready to let the world see what he had always known, that true genius often blooms where no one expects. The Ferrari's hood was lifted, and the crowd gathered closer. With mocking smiles still on their faces, they crossed their arms, waiting to see him fail. The young mechanic reached for his worn-out toolbox, tools that looked out of place beside the polished machine worth millions. As his hands touched the engine, silence fell. He worked with precision, his eyes scanning every detail, listening to the subtle whispers of the machine. To him, the Ferrari wasn't a mystery. It was speaking a language only he could understand. He tightened bolts, adjusted valves, checked connections others had ignored. Sweat ran down his face, but his movements remained calm, steady, and confident. The wealthy men exchanged glances, some smirking, others starting to wonder if the boy truly knew more than they imagined. This was his first test, the moment that would either confirm their laughter or plant the first seed of doubt. Hours passed, and the young mechanic's hands moved with tireless determination. What the experts had overlooked, he discovered: a hidden flaw buried deep within the Ferrari's complex system. The problem wasn't where everyone thought it was. The engine hadn't failed from the obvious. It was a subtle misalignment, a detail so small that even certified specialists had dismissed it. Yet to him it stood out like a scar. He paused, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and smiled faintly. "This is it," he whispered to himself. The laughter around him began to fade, as curiosity replaced mockery. For the first time, the onlookers leaned closer, no longer sure of their judgment. Something was shifting. The boy wasn't just tinkering with parts. He was revealing a truth none of them had seen. It was here that the balance began to change. The doubted mechanic was no longer the joke. He was becoming the only one who truly understood the beast under that hood. But as the mechanic adjusted the final pieces and prepared for the next step, the crowd's skepticism erupted once again. "Look at him wasting time," one man sneered. "This is a Ferrari, not some rusty bike from his poor garage," another added with a laugh. Their words cut through the air like knives, each one meant to belittle him, to remind him of his place. The wealthy owner chuckled, convinced the boy was only stalling for attention. To them, his every movement was proof that he was in over his head. The mockery grew louder, echoing through the showroom, feeding on arrogance and pride. But the young mechanic didn't flinch. Every insult was fuel, every laugh another reason to stay focused. Inside, he whispered to himself, "They can laugh now. Soon their laughter will turn to silence." The young mechanic's hands tightened the last bolt. With a deep breath, he turned the key. For a heartbeat, the world stood still. The engine roared to life, not with hesitation, not with stuttering coughs, but with a flawless, thunderous growl that filled the air. The sound was pure, powerful, and alive. The mocking voices froze. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Every laugh died in the throats of those who had ridiculed him just moments before. All eyes locked on the Ferrari, now humming with perfection, as if reborn. For the first time, the room was silent. Not because of doubt, but because of awe. The boy, once dismissed and mocked, had spoken the language of machines fluently, and the Ferrari had answered. In that silence, respect began to bloom. The crowd leaned in, struggling to believe what their eyes and ears told them. The Ferrari purred as if it had never been broken. The young mechanic didn't stop there. He fine-tuned the revs, adjusted the idle, and revealed the true performance hidden within the machine. Then, with one confident gesture, he pressed the accelerator. The Ferrari roared with raw power, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The sound was flawless, smoother than it had ever been under the hands of certified experts. Gasps filled the room. Faces that once sneered now showed shock, disbelief, even admiration. The impossible had happened. The boy from a humble garage had done what the wealthy, the educated, and the proud could not. It was more than a repair. It was a revelation. The Ferrari's perfect roar echoed like a thunderclap that shattered every ounce of arrogance in the room. The wealthy owner, who had mocked the mechanic most of all, now stood frozen, his proud smile replaced by disbelief. His eyes widened, his jaw clenched. He had underestimated someone he believed beneath him. The laughter that once filled the air was gone, replaced by uneasy silence. Every man who had ridiculed the boy now avoided eye contact, ashamed of their own words. Pride, so strong only moments before, crumbled like glass under the weight of undeniable truth. The young mechanic, calm and unshaken, didn't gloat or mock them back. His silence was enough. The Ferrari's flawless hum spoke louder than any argument ever could, and in that moment, the powerful realized a painful lesson. Their wealth and titles meant nothing against the brilliance of a determined soul. Slowly, the silence gave way to whispers, not of doubt, but of awe. The very men who had mocked him now stepped closer, their faces softened with reluctant admiration. How did he do it?" one murmured. "I've never seen an engine run this clean," another admitted. The wealthy owner, still humbled by what he had witnessed, extended his hand, a gesture of respect he never imagined giving to a boy from a humble garage. The mechanic accepted it quietly, his gaze steady, his posture calm. He hadn't come for applause, he came to prove himself. In that moment, he wasn't just a poor young man anymore, he was a master, recognized by those who once looked down on him. The room that had laughed now stood in reverence. The boy had earned what money couldn't buy, respect. The Ferrari's engine slowly settled into a steady purr, as if honoring the hands that had revived it. The young mechanic looked around the room, at the millionaires, the skeptics, the doubters, and spoke softly, Never measure a man by his clothes, his wealth, or where he comes from. True worth is revealed in his courage, his skill, and his heart. His words hung in the air like a heavy truth no one could deny. What began as laughter had ended as silence, respect, and reflection. The boy had proven that greatness can rise from the most unexpected places. That day a Ferrari was fixed, but more than that, pride was humbled, and a lesson was carved forever in the hearts of those who witnessed it. Before you leave, let me ask you, have you liked, shared, and subscribed yet? Stories like this deserve to inspire the world, and with your support they will.